Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Brunch Talk, brought to you by the DATEABLE podcast. I like saying brought to you by because it makes it sound really big. Like brought to you by Pepsi. Brought to you by the DATEABLE podcast. Like we have a huge team behind us.
Hey, we do actually have a growing team. We do have an editor now who is doing this phenomenal job behind the scenes.
Yes.
So.
And yes, okay, I won't say any more about him because I need to meet him still before
I need to make sure he's okay with us, like, giving him the shout out. So we'll leave it at that. We'll talk with him. He'll hear this as he's editing and he can decide. And if he's cool with it, we can pip him out, I know he is recently single. And that's what drove him to this dating content to edit. So he did find us, and he's been doing a phenomenal job. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. We don't know how public he wants to be, so we'll leave it at that.
I think it's so funny that he knows us so intimately, like listening to our voices every week, but we don't know much about him yet. So just so you know, we are going to get to know you because we're nosy like that, or at least I am.
I love that. Questions. I've had one convo, but yes, not as much as we could. It's funny that we're like talking to him, but to our audience at the same time.
He's going to be like a third character on our show without ever revealing who he is. It's kind of funny. It's nice. Yes. But it's good. It's good. I'm happy we're back for more Brunch Talk. Not that we were not going to be back. Brunch is always going to be around. It's not going extinct, y'all. It's not going anywhere. But I am happy that we were back to talk over brunch and to dig into some of your burning dating questions. I've noticed that a lot of the dating questions now, especially now that dating's picking up with cuffing season and the holidays, similar questions are being recycled back around these bad dating behaviors. I feel like the more you date, the more you encountered bad dating behaviors. Have you noticed that? There's just more of that coming around.
It's just going to happen. I think like clearly we're going to get into it, but some of it unfortunately is kind of par of the course. And I'm not saying that to excuse bad behavior, but ultimately you decide how much you're going to embrace it and how much you're going to even entertain it in the first place.
Yeah. And that's what we want to help you do. It's like, how do you prevent bad dating behavior? But also once it does happen to you, what's the best response, right?
Yeah, sometimes you can't prevent it. You can't control other people. That's what we know.
Yes, there we go. So with Halloween that just passed and, sure that's still maybe on some of your minds. I don't know. I'm trying to relate this back to the question. We're going to get to the question.
It is a spooky one. Yes.
You'll see why we're bringing this back to Halloween. The question is it ever okay to ghost someone?
Yep. And for more context, the listener wrote in, I recently went on a date that was meh. We said at the end that we would hang again, but neither of us has reached out yet. Is it okay to ghost, or should I send a text saying I actually don't want to meet up?
Yeah, this is a great question because there's a line between ghosting and just phasing out communication. There is a difference. Technically, ghosting is you've promised to keep in touch and keep the communication going, but you fail on that promise. Phasing someone out is when both parties just don't make an effort to keep the communication going, and there was never a promise for a next time. Now, in this particular situation, you kind of casually said you would hang out again. But if neither party has made that effort to step forward and say, hey, remember when you said you're going to hang out? We should hang out again. Let's hang out again. I think it's totally okay in this scenario to just let it go and let it phase out. I don't actually think it's ghosting because you didn't make any actual plans yet.
Yeah, I think it's like goes a little above a promise, though. If someone reaches out to you and you leave them on red, I think that's ghosting. Maybe it's not intentional. It also depends what they said, too. I want to take that back. If they like asked you to hang out again or you just didn't respond to a non-question, I think there's a little difference there. there's a line, like they might think you're ghosting them, but you also just could be not responsive. That being said, my general rule of thumb is if someone's not reaching out, then I don't think it's ghosting. Like you were saying, it's just, I mean, I've been so annoyed actually when someone reaches out proactively to tell me they don't want to see me again. It's like, well, I haven't reached out to you. Why do you think that I want to see you again? You know, I know it sounds childish saying it out loud, but it does really piss me off. So I don't think you're doing anything wrong. And I guess if the top line question, is it ever okay to ghost? I think in this situation, it maybe is okay, but I also don't think you're ghosting. So it's kind of a moot point at that point.
Yeah. And, you know, you have to ask yourself this question. What do I need to do to make myself feel good about myself that I can sleep? Did I do my best? Did I try my best? For some people, it might be, I'm totally okay letting this go and just letting this be a ghost. It's fine. And I can live with myself. Other people, if you're writing in with this question, maybe it's really bothering you that you haven't closed the loop with this person. If that is the case, you do you. Maybe you do reach out and say, listen, I know we talked about hanging out again. I gave it some thought and I think you're a great person. I just don't see us, you know, having a romantic connection. If that makes you feel better, do that. I think it like the question back to you is, what would you want to do to feel good about yourself?
I mean, I think that's certainly important, but I think you also need to think about the other person too. And I know, granted, you don't know them super well. If it's something the way you phrased it of, you know, I've been thinking about this more, I know we talked about it, I think that's different than getting the text if you've never even talked about it. Or, you know, like loosely.
Yes.
I don't know. It's so hard because like when you're leaving a date, like people will bring it up and both parties can just be like, yeah, that sounds good. Because it's really awkward to say like, no, I never want to see you again. So I almost feel like that piece doesn't like hold a ton of weight. If you have like a time set up, a day planned, then absolutely you should said something. I think like if you've gone that far and neither party has reached out, you should probably send what you were just saying of I've changed my mind, my sentiments changed. So there's that. But
yeah. We should just be more careful about the words that come out of our mouths. I find that sometimes we're on this default setting after a date and we just say random casual things like, would love to do this again. Had so much fun. See you later. You know, let's do this again sometime. When we don't mean it.
No, I know.
Why don't we just take a pause after a date and you know, ask, do I actually want to see this person again? And if I don't, maybe I shouldn't say these things that normally come out of my mouth for no reason.
I think it's important that we read the situation too. So yeah, like absolutely what you just said is we should only say what we actually mean. But that also could be that sometimes someone will be like, yeah, we should hang out again and get like kind of pushy about it. And then the person's like, okay, like, you know, it's like not enthusiastic.
Yeah.
So it's hearing what someone's saying, but also watching what they're doing. And I'll use this example because you were there, UA. Do you remember that time when I had that guy show up at the art event we went to?
Yes. How can I forget? That poor guy.
Oh my God. We went on one date. The guy invited himself to this event. We went on a second date before because it felt really awkward. We had the same date as the first date. Talked about the exact same things. Like he didn't remember anything I had said. Anyways, needless to say, by the time I even got to the art event, I was not into it. And I think it was pretty clear that like it was not a match on both of our parts, like very clear. And UA also made it really awkward. You're like, why are you here? But that's another point.
I didn't ask that. I just casually cropped him out of a photo as we were taking one. I was like, can you stand off to the side?
I do remember that, but I also remember you saying some other stuff. Anyways, regardless, anyone with any emotional intelligence or any just intelligence in general would see that this was not a fit. Like, I never reached out to him again. I was never expecting him to reach out to me again. We never said, like, we'll see each other again. It was very clear. I get this long-ass message from him, like, basically, like, apologizing that it wasn't a match and, like, this is how he's feeling. And I'm like, it was probably 4 days later, and I was also just going through shit with my ex at the time, too. So you never know where someone's at. I'm like, who is this from? Like, I literally
Yeah.
didn't even know who it was from.
Yeah.
And this guy's like pouring his heart out, saying like all this stuff. And it's just like, read the room, bro. Like, I know that probably made you feel good, but like being on the receiving end of that is weird too. So the long way of saying it is I think it's important to think about like, okay, what is going to make you sleep at night? How is it going to make you feel better? But also like, are you doing this just to like protect yourself, or are you doing it because it's actually nice to the other person?
Right. Yeah. And not everyone has high EQ to read the room. I understand that. So maybe some people will just have to give them a hall pass and say, you know, maybe you just couldn't read the room right. But what's in your control is how you share the information, and conversely, how do you receive the information? I remember there was this guy that I met at a bar when I was super drunk, and I don't remember his face at all. I just remember our conversation, and I just remember him saying he was a urologist. So I'm like, okay, I don't remember his name, but he's a urologist. And we exchanged numbers, and then he wanted to hang out again. So we hung out again, but I hadn't come in a group situation because I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So to hedge my bet, I had him join my friend group out for something, and nobody knew what his name was because everyone was just like, you know, I knew him as a urologist. So he came in, and right away, I think he knew that this wasn't going to be a fit. He knew right away this is very casual. He wasn't looking for that. So halfway through our hangout session, he kind of stopped and said, Yue, I did enjoy meeting you that first night. I feel like things aren't really there right now. You have a good time with your friends. I'm out, and it was really nice knowing you. And all my friends were there to witness this. Now, it was a little bit embarrassing for me that he did this in front of my friends, but looking back on it, I so appreciated it. Maybe he didn't read the room, or maybe he did. Yeah. I don't know. Now I'm like debating, did he have a high EQ or not? But he did put himself first in this situation and think, yeah, I'm not having a good time here, and this is not going anywhere, so I'm going to get out when I can, but I'm not going to like make her feel like there's going to be something more after this. So I did really appreciate that. But, you know, at the time I was like, was that really necessary? But looking back on it, yeah. I'm glad he did, because now I would never put someone in that situation again.
I would say that wasn't ghosting, though. So, okay, back to the original question.
Yeah.
Is it okay to ghost or not? I personally don't think you should ghost. Like, if someone reaches out, I feel like you should give them a response back, even if it's not the right one. What we're getting at, though, is all these other situations that aren't cut and dry ghosting. What your situation is, the situation I mentioned, no plans set up. Even this one in the email, it's questionable. They didn't have like a time and date. It could be like a nice passing by. I think in that case, yes, it's okay to ghost. I think you need to read the room. I think you need to see the situation. Maybe not read the room. That's a bad way to say it, but just understand your unique situation. And as much as like you can know about the other person, I get it's hard when you only met them one time, but think about it like, what's like, am I being kind here, or am I just feeding my own ego?
Right. Yeah. And that matters quite a bit. Ghosting is funny. On the receiving end, it's only ghosting if you like the person. If you don't like the person,
oh
it's
my
not
God,
ghosting.
that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point.
You would never be like, oh, I didn't like that person, and they ghosted me. No, you wouldn't say.
So I was thinking about this time where I did talk about having plans with someone. We had like a follow-up. In retrospect, I think it was me that initiated the text after. But he seemed very enthusiastic about hanging out again. Then didn't hear from him like all weekend. Didn't think it was that weird because, you know, beginning stage. Messaged on like Monday, never heard back. And then finally I just like, you know, because I was just at this point, I was like, I don't fucking care anymore. Like, I'm just going to say what's on my mind. And I basically just said like, you know, like you could have just replied back and said like, things changed for you. Like, no need to like ghost me. And his response was, oh, I just assumed you would figure it out after like 3 days had passed. Like, no contacts kind of thing. And that irked me because I'm like, not everyone knows your rules. I still stand by if someone reaches out, just there's a simple conversation that can be had that things changed for you or it wasn't the connection you were looking for. I do believe that that is common courtesy. If someone is actively messaging you, just not to ignore it. That I do think is ghosting, in my opinion.
Yes. If you're not answering a text that ends in a question mark, that is ghosting. Because that's even with your friends, with your family. You never leave them hanging like that. So that is ghosting. What do you think about this scenario? I went on a date with this guy. First date, we met off one of the apps. And intense chemistry, intense makeout session. Just one of those long dates. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so into him. And we have this passionate kiss goodbye. No promise of a next date. Just like, I had such a great time. So great getting to know you. And then never heard from him again. Is that ghosting?
But you never reached out.
I never reached out.
I
did reach out on, I think it was like, I think we met right before Valentine's Day. So he reached out and said, Happy Valentine's Day. And I said, Happy Valentine's Day. That was it.
So he didn't ghost you then, if he reached out.
Is that not ghosting? Because we never saw each other again.
I think it's just a fade. Like, especially if he did I think there's a lot of, this is where the gray area comes in, right? In my definition, and this is just my definition, it's like someone, and I think we actually did this on our Confessions of a Reformed Ghoster episode. It's someone that you've had contact with. So it's not necessarily someone on an app that you don't know at all, like someone that you have a personal connection with. So in my opinion, that includes date one, that you've met this person in person and they ask you to do something or they ask a question and you just never respond. But Happy Valentine's Day and then you said it back, like that doesn't feel like ghosting. It just feels like neither of you took initiative after that.
Yeah, that's not really good. It's just a fade out.
It's like a fade, a slow fade.
A slow fade. Yeah. I still wonder about that guy because of course I stalked him on social media and he ended up back with his ex-girlfriend.
Well,
he talked
that's
on the date. So,
probably the reality. Like, I mean, that's the other thing. When people do ghost you, it doesn't always mean that they like hated you and think you're a terrible person and not dateable. Like, that's not what it means. A lot of times, usually there's something else going on in their lives. You don't know what it is. It could just be that you weren't the right fit, but I think those are more obvious sometimes. It's these like ones, unless you just wildly misread the room, which we did talk about, could happen. But also, you just have no idea what's going on for people.
Have you ever ghosted someone?
No. I feel like I would never. Like, I think, okay, the only time I've ghosted someone, and I don't actually consider this ghosting either, so you let me know if you think it is. I've told them explicitly I don't think that it's a fit, and they continue to message. At that point, I've stopped responding multiple times this has happened, but I don't think that's ghosting because I actually said, like, this isn't going anywhere.
Yes, I agree. I don't think that's ghosting.
I've never left someone on red without giving them an explanation. If it's obvious that they are trying to pursue something. Like if someone just sends a statement that doesn't warrant a response, maybe.
Yeah.
And I would never, okay, so if someone sends a statement that doesn't warrant the response, I would never reply and just be like, oh my God, we're not a fit. Like, goodbye, best of luck. I feel like that feels preemptive to me. So I would always, I'd either respond like, haha, or like a one-word answer to kind of show like, I'm not super vibing, but I'm not going to be rude, or I just wouldn't respond if I really didn't like them and it didn't need a response. And then if they asked for the next date or they asked to do something, then I would say it's not a fit.
Right. Yeah. I think that makes sense.
I mean, everyone's different is what I'm learning. I feel like for me, it just feels very preemptive to like throw it out, but I agree with you in the sense, like the example that you gave of the guy at the bar, maybe because like that one's real time and it's his time at the end of the day. Like that also is a factor. We did an episode a long time ago. I think it was like season 4, Bathroom Bail, where our friend went on a second date. The guy went to the bathroom to never come back. That to me is fucked. Just grow some and come back and say it's not a match.
I mean, that is the ultimate ghosting. That is savage.
Terrible
ghosting.
It is. It's like real time in real life ghosting, if that's a thing.
Yeah, that's like you standing face to face with someone and you saying, "Hey, you want to go out again?" and them just looking at you straight in the eyes and not saying anything back and then walking away.
Or like running away as they say it.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? This guy straight up did that. I'm going to the bathroom. And by the way, I'm also leaving and never coming back.
I think it's so important to think about, like, how am I impacting others in this?
Yeah.
Is so important, because if someone said that, like, who would want to get left at the table thinking this person's coming back and just being left there? That's a terrible thing to do to someone. I don't care how scared you are, how uncomfortable it is for you to confront this and say it's not a match. You freaking buckle up and do it. Like, that is messed up. And I also feel like the same is on the other side. Like, I had this guy that I dated for a bit. We slept together and it was terrible. We went out one more time and I couldn't do it again. And I literally was like, I need to do homework. Like, I was in school at the time, not college, like post-college school. So it wasn't that long ago, but it was a while ago. And he went to Europe for 3 months. And I was like, great, this is going to naturally fade out. Don't hear from him the first month he comes back. Don't hear from him the entire time. 2 months later, I get a text, we need to talk. And it was basically, I'm like, oh my God, do I have like an STD? And I'm like, there's no way. But like, why would this person be sending this? And he basically was breaking up with me. And I'm like, this is so unnecessary.
Who are you again?
Clearly, I have not been reaching out to you. In that case, it felt to me like I want to get the last word in.
Yes. Yes.
Because there was some uncomfortableness of like the next date not progressing. It was like, I want to win. That's what it felt like.
Yes.
If that's where it's coming from for you, there's no need to bring that person into that. So it really is like, what is going on in this situation and what's going to actually be the best for this person I'm interacting with, in my opinion.
Yep. It's taking into account what it is you want, what it is that will make you feel good about yourself. Are you doing something that's aligned with your own values? Would you want someone to do this to you?
Yes.
And then also taking into account the other person, how would they receive this information? And if you taking into account that 360-degree view, then you're good, right? You've thought about everything. You tried your best. And that's the only thing we can do is just say, I tried my best.
There you go. So the answer to, is it ever okay to ghost? Really try your best and make sure that all 3 of those are checked off. I don't say try your best like, oh, I couldn't have the conversation. Like, really think about all 3 of those factors and the situation at hand and how to proceed. And, you know, sometimes the best self-growth comes from pushing ourselves. So if you feel like I'm really scared to say something, or I actually like maybe shouldn't say something, but I'm going to do it anyways, like, go against that and do what's actually best for the situation. Do what's best for the situation, because that's where you're going to grow too.
Yes. A learning opportunity. Thank you for that question. For everybody else, keep those Mojo. For everybody else, keep those questions coming. Even if you've sent in a question before, we love repeat customers. Let's get those questions in. You can email us hello@dateablepodcast.com, or you can DM us on Instagram @dateablepodcast.